You're scrolling through your feed. There's your friend posting vacation photos with the caption, "Living my best life." Your coworker sharing their promotion announcement with a champagne emoji. That influencer talking about gratitude and manifesting abundance. And you look at all of it and think, everyone else has it figured out. But here's what you don't see. Your friend cried on that vacation because they feel empty no matter where they go. Your coworker got the promotion but still feels like a fraud. And that influencer? They're performing happiness because admitting they're miserable would destroy the brand they've built. Because the people who look the happiest are often the ones suffering the most in silence. And they've gotten so good at faking it, they've almost convinced themselves it's real. If you're someone who smiles in public but unravels in private, who is everything on paper but feels nothing inside, who's surrounded by people but feels completely alone, this one's for you. Today, we're diving into the psychology of people who are secretly unhappy. The ones society sees as successful, stable, put together. But behind closed doors, they're quietly falling apart. And no one has a clue. Here's the thing nobody wants to admit. You can have the career, the relationship, the house, the friends, all the things you were told would make you happy, and still feel absolutely nothing. Or worse, feel like you're drowning. Because happiness isn't a checklist. It's not a formula. And the people who are secretly unhappy have followed all the rules, checked all the boxes, and they're standing at the finish line thinking, this is it? This is what I worked for. Psychologists call this the arrival fallacy, the belief that reaching a goal will bring lasting happiness. But research from Harvard psychologist Tal Ben-Shahar shows that achievement-based happiness fades fast, usually within weeks. And when it does, you're left with the same emptiness you had before, except now you can't even blame it on not having achieved enough. You have everything, and you're still miserable. That's a special kind of hell. Let's talk about the first type, the high-functioning miserable. This person wakes up every day and goes through the motions. They shower. They go to work. They answer texts. They show up to dinner with friends. From the outside, they look fine, normal, maybe even thriving. But inside, they're running on autopilot. Nothing brings them joy. Nothing excites them. They're not suicidal, but they're not really living either. They're just existing. Psychologists call this anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure, and it's one of the core symptoms of depression. But here's the trap. Because they're still functioning, because they haven't completely fallen apart, they don't think they're sick enough to ask for help. A 2021 study from the Journal of Clinical Psychology found that high-functioning depressives go an average of 7 years before seeking treatment because they convince themselves, other people have it worse. I should be grateful. I'm fine. They're not fine. They're just really good at pretending. Then there's the success-obsessed empty, and this one's devastating. This is the person who built their entire identity around achievement. The promotions, the degrees, the accolades, the external validation. And for a while it worked. Every win gave them a hit of dopamine, a temporary sense of worth. But now, no matter how much they achieve, the emptiness follows. Because they were chasing success as a way to avoid dealing with what's actually broken inside. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation, the phenomenon where we quickly get used to positive changes and return to our baseline happiness level. Research from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who derive their self-worth primarily from external achievements report lower life satisfaction and higher rates of anxiety and depression. Because the goal was never the point. The goal was the distraction. And when you reach it and you're still unhappy, you're forced to confront the terrifying truth. The problem isn't what you don't have. The problem is who you've become to get it. But let's go deeper, because some people are secretly unhappy because they're living someone else's life. This is the people pleaser in disguise. They chose the career their parents wanted. They stayed in the relationship because breaking up seemed cruel. They live in the city everyone said was the place to be. They've spent so long making decisions based on what other people expected. They don't even know what they actually want anymore. Psychologists call this identity foreclosure. When you adopt an identity without exploring alternatives, and it leads to what researchers call a midlife crisis, or more accurately, a delayed identity crisis. A 2019 study from developmental psychology found that people who made major life decisions based on external pressure rather than internal alignment report significantly higher rates of regret, dissatisfaction, and feelings of being trapped. They're not ungrateful. They're grieving the life they never gave themselves permission to live. Then there's the relationship faker, and this is one of the loneliest positions to be in. This person is in a relationship, maybe even married, and from the outside it looks perfect. The cute couple photos, the anniversary posts, the inside jokes, but behind closed doors they feel completely alone. The emotional intimacy is gone. The conversations are surface level. They're roommates pretending to be partners. And the worst part? They can't even complain about being lonely because people will say, "But you have someone." Psychologists call this intimate loneliness, and research from the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that people in emotionally disconnected relationships report higher rates of depression than people who are single. Because at least when you're single, your loneliness makes sense. But when you're lonely next to someone, it feels like proof that you're fundamentally unlovable. They're not staying because they're happy. They're staying because leaving feels impossible, and admitting the relationship is dead feels like failure. Now let's talk about the nostalgic prisoner. This is the person who's unhappy because they're stuck in the past. They're constantly comparing their present to a version of their life that felt better. Maybe it was college. Maybe it was their 20s. Maybe it was before the trauma, before the loss, before everything changed. And now, no matter what they do, nothing feels as good as it used to. Psychologists call this rosy retrospection, the tendency to remember the past as better than it actually was. But here's the problem. Research from the Journal of Experimental Psychology found that people who engage in chronic nostalgic thinking report lower present moment happiness and higher rates of depression. Because you can't live in a memory. And every moment you spend trying to recreate the past is a moment you're not present for your actual life. They're not unhappy because their life is bad. They're unhappy because they've decided it'll never be as good as it was. And here's a type that breaks my heart. The burned out giver. This person has spent their entire life taking care of everyone else. They're the therapist friend. The one who shows up. The one who listens, supports, sacrifices. And they do it because they genuinely care. But somewhere along the way, they forgot to take care of themselves. And now they're running on empty. They're exhausted, resentful, completely depleted. But they can't stop because everyone depends on them. And if they admit they're unhappy, they're afraid people will think they're selfish. Psychologists call this compassion fatigue. And it's rampant among caregivers, healers, and people pleasers. A 2020 study found that chronic givers have significantly higher rates of burnout, anxiety, and suppressed anger. They're not unhappy because they don't care. They're unhappy because they cared so much they forgot they mattered too. Then there's the comparison addict, and social media has made this type epidemic. This is the person who measures their happiness by everyone else's highlight reel. They see friends getting engaged, buying houses, traveling, succeeding, and they think, why am I so far behind? Even when their life is objectively fine, it never feels like enough because someone else always has more. Psychologists call this social comparison anxiety, and research from the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology found that people who spend more than 30 minutes a day on social media report significantly higher rates of depression and life dissatisfaction. Because you're not comparing your life to reality. You're comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's edited performance. And that's a game you'll never win. And here's one of the quietest forms of unhappiness. The person who doesn't know why. They have no obvious reason to be unhappy. No trauma, no major loss, no clear explanation. And that makes it worse. Because they feel guilty for feeling bad. What right do I have to be unhappy when my life is fine? So they suffer in silence, convinced that their unhappiness isn't valid. Psychologists call this unexplained melancholy, and it's often linked to chronic low-grade depression, unmet emotional needs, or unresolved internal conflicts. Research shows that people who can't identify the source of their unhappiness are less likely to seek help because they don't think they have a real problem. But you don't need a reason to feel what you feel. Pain doesn't require justification. Here's what I need you to understand. Being secretly unhappy doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human, and you've been carrying something heavy for too long. The first step isn't fixing it. The first step is admitting it, out loud, to yourself, to someone you trust, because the secret is what's killing you, not the unhappiness itself. So tell me, are you secretly unhappy? Drop a quiet emoji in the comments if you've been faking okay for too long. And if this hits something deep, subscribe. Because we don't just talk about psychology here. We see the parts of you that you've been hiding. And sometimes, being seen is the beginning of healing.